Once upon a time, there was a woman who had no children. She once went to a good witch for help. The woman said she was dreaming of a child. The sorceress gave her a seed and ordered to plant it in a flower pot. The woman was very happy, thanked the old woman, and went home. At home, she planted a seed, watered it, and began to wait patiently. Soon a large wonderful flower, like a tulip, grew in the pot. When its petals opened, there was a tiny girl inside. She was very small, no more than an inch. Therefore, the woman called her Thumbelina. One night, when Thumbelina was fast asleep, a huge toad climbed onto the window of the house, wet and ugly. She grabbed the sleeping girl and hurried to her swamp. The toad decided to marry her ugly son to the beautiful Thumbelina. She planted her in the middle of the river on a wide lily leaf so that the girl would not run away. In the morning, Thumbelina woke up, and realized that she was not at home, but there was water around her. When the girl realized what a terrible fate awaited her, she wept bitterly. At this moment, small fish swam past. They felt sorry for Thumbelina. They gnawed at the stem of the lily, and the leaf floated with the flow with the girl. A large beetle flew past. Seeing a beautiful girl, he grabbed her and carried her to a tree, where he introduced her to his friends. They all envied her beauty, but said that Thumbelina was very ugly and could not be in their company. Under pressure from acquaintances, the beetle also decided that she was ugly, lowered the girl to the ground and said goodbye. All summer Thumbelina lived alone in the forest. She made a cradle for herself from grass and leaves. She ate on pollen and dew, basked in the sun in clear weather, and hid from the rain under a large leaf of burdock. But soon cold rains and winds came. Thumbelina did not have a winter outfit, and she began to freeze. The girl suffered from hunger and cold. And one day she was sheltered by a field mouse. Hey! They lived together gloriously. The girl helped the mouse with the housework, told her fairy tales, and in return received warm housing and food. The field mouse had a neighbor, a wealthy blind mole, who did this by counting his wealth all the time. Even being blind, the mole realized that Thumbelina was very cute and offered to marry her. But the girl was not at all happy about this. She did not like the boring mole. Once, walking along the underground passages, Thumbelina saw a wounded swallow, which almost died of the cold.
Oh no!
All winter she took care of the sick bird and by the spring she cured her. Before the wedding, Thumbelina asked the mouse to let her go upstairs to admire the sun at last. When she climbed out of the mouse hole, she saw a swallow, which she cured. Thumbelina complained to the bird that she was being forced to marry a nasty mole and live with him deep underground. The swallow invited the girl to fly with her to warm lands, and she agreed. She quickly said goodbye to the mouse, climbed onto the swallow, and they flew away. Once in a wonderful country, Thumbelina saw a huge meadow with beautiful flowers. She chose the most beautiful flower for herself to live in. Suddenly, she saw in the flower the same little man as she, only with wings. It was the king of the elves. And an elf lived in every flower. The beautiful elf has never seen a girl as small as himself, and even so beautiful. He immediately fell in love with Thumbelina, and invited her to become his wife, the queen of the elves and the queen of flowers. After all her adventures, the girl was happy to hear such an offer from the charming prince. She happily agreed. The elf took Thumbelina by the hand, and at the same moment 2 wings appeared behind her. Now she has become the queen of the elves. And since then they have lived happily ever after.
Once there was a woodcutter with 2 children and their stepmother. The boy's name was Hansel, and the girl's name was Gretel. They lived so poorly that sometimes there was not even anything to eat. And then one evening he lay in bed, pondering how to feed the children further. His wife advised him to have children in the forest, light a fire, give a piece of bread each and leave them there, not all 4 of them die of hunger. But the woodcutter did not agree. And until then, his wife persuaded him that he finally agreed. And the children, because of hunger, also could not sleep and heard everything that their stepmother said to their father. And when the parents fell asleep, Hansel secretly rushed out of the house. The moon was shining brightly, and the white stones glittered like coins. Hansel pocketed as many of them as he could fit. Then he returned home and the children went to bed. In the morning, the stepmother came to the children, gave each of them a piece of bread, and they all went to the forest together. On the way, Hansel threw out white stones one by one. When they arrived at the clearing, my father began to light a fire. He ordered the children to sit near the fire and make sure that it didn't go out, while they and their stepmother would go for more firewood. They sat, tired, and fell fast asleep. When the children woke up, it was a dark night all around. And when a full month had risen in the sky, Hansel took his sister by the hand and went, looking for the way through the pebbles, which glittered like new coins, and showed them the way. They walked all night long, and at dawn they came to their father's house. Some time passed, and the children again heard how the stepmother one night began to beg their father to get rid of the children. He refused, but his wife did not want to listen to him. She cursed and expressed all sorts of reproaches to him. When the parents fell asleep, Hansel, like the last time, wanted to collect stones, but the stepmother locked the door and the boy could not leave the house. Early in the morning, the children were given a piece of bread each, even less than the previous time. On the way to the forest, Hansel shredded his piece in his pocket and threw the crumbs on the ground. The stepmother took them even further into the forest. Again a big fire was lit, and the father ordered the children to watch the fire while they and their stepmother chopped some more wood. When lunchtime came, Gretel shared her piece of bread with Hansel. And they fell asleep. We woke up when the dark night fell. And then a month came up, and they got together on their way, but they could not find a single crumbs, because thousands of birds fluttering in the forest had long been eating those crumbs. So the children walked for a very long time, but they could not get out of the forest. Suddenly, the road led them to the hut. Coming closer, the children saw that the house was all built of bread and biscuits, and the windows were made of pure sugar. Hansel reached up and broke off a piece of the roof, while Gretel went to the window and began gnawing at its windows. And then the door in the hut opened wide, and the old woman came out, leaning on a crutch. Hansel and Gretel were so scared that they even dropped their tidbits from their hands. And the old woman was kind and invited them to her hut. There was already abundant food on the table: milk, cookies, apples, and nuts. After dinner, the old woman made 2 clean beds for the children, and Hansel and her sister thought they were in heaven. But the old woman only pretended to be affectionate, but in fact she was an evil witch, who built her bread hut for this purpose in order to lure children. Early in the morning, while the children were sleeping, she took Hansel and put him in a small cage. And she ordered her sister to do everything that the wicked witch demanded of her. The old woman decided to fatten the boy in order to eat him later. So Gretel began to cook the most delicious food for Hansel, and she herself got nothing but leftovers. Some time passed, and the boy did not get fat. Then the old woman did not want to wait any longer, and decided to cook and eat Hansel. She ordered Gretel to light the stove and apply water. When the stove warmed up, the old woman ordered her to climb into the stove and see if it was hot enough. So she wanted to push the girl into the fire and bake her. But Gretel knew what was on her mind. She said that she did not know how to get in there, and asked the witch to show herself. The old woman got angry and climbed into the oven. Then Gretel pushed her and slammed the shutter behind the witch. Wow, how terribly the old woman howled then. Gretel, meanwhile, rushed to Hansel and opened the cage. Having freed their brother, they went to the witch's room, in which there were boxes of pearls and precious stones in all corners, filled their pockets with them, and went home. For several days the children were looking for their way back. The forest seemed more and more familiar, and at last they saw their father's house in the distance. How glad he was to see his children alive. Hansel and Gretel poured on the floor all the pearls and gems they had taken from the witch. There was no need to think about food. And they began to live, and rejoice. And the father drove the evil stepmother out of the house.